Okay, it's already been recorded. All right, so Obawumi, can you give us a recap? We talked about in our last class on Thursday. Obawumi, please help us with our last topic. The topic we did on Saturday. Obawumi, are you there? Obawumi, are you there? Okay, I don't think Obawumi is there. Okay. Oh, thank you very much, Obawumi, for dropping that message in the chat box. So in our last class, we talked about variation and variation in population. We talked about variation in population. We talked about the definition of population, the population of variation, the types of variation, and applications of variation. And I said variation is gotten from the word vary. When you say something varies, it means it's different. When there are differences. So, about me, how many types of variation do we have? About me, you can drop a message in the chat box. How many types of variations do we have? Okay. I guess about me is not there. So in our last class, I did mention that we have two types of variation. I said we have morphological, also called continuous variation. Oh, thank you, about me. Your text incoming in time. There are two types of variation. So morphological or also called continuous variation, and we have physiological, also called discontinuous variation. I will say the morphological variation are the ones that we can see. They are noticeable physically. We can see it with our eyes. For example, if somebody is tall, you can see that the person is tall. If the person is fair or dark in complexion, you can see if the person is fair or dark in complexion. If the person has a big nose, you can see that the person's nose is quite big. If the person has big ears, you can see that it's quite big. So those are examples of morphological variation in human beings. In plants, now, for example, we have the size of various parts of the plant, like the leaves, the fruits. The fruits on a plant might be small. For example, mango tree. I've seen a mango tree that the fruit, the mango fruit is so big, and I've seen some mango trees, their fruit is small. So those are examples of morphological variation in plants. For physiological variation, these are differences that we cannot see with our eyes. For example, the blood group of the person. You can, for example, as I'm speaking with you right now, you cannot uh, correctly say what my blood group is. You cannot correctly say. And as Obawumi is here now, if I tell her, oh yeah, turn on your camera, let me take a look at you. I want to know your blood group. There's no way I can decipher what her blood group is or her genotype is just by looking at her. Okay, we talk about ability to roll the tongue, ability to close one eye and leave the other open, what we call winking. Then in our last class, we also talked about the application of variation. We said it can be used in crime detection, especially fingerprinting. You can use fingerprinting for crime detection, and also DNA samples. In our last class, I did give an example. I said, let's say, for example, they find a corpse along a road. Forensic people will come and pick up that body. They take it to the lab. They do a sweep of the body from head to toe. Maybe in the victim's fingernails, they can find strands of hair, and from there they can determine the DNA of that person. They can even find fingerprints on the victim's body, on the corpse, and from the fingerprint they can run it through a database and get a list of people that have possibly committed the crime, that possibly murdered the individual. All right, so I think that's what we talked about in our last class. So today we'll be talking about evolution. I'm going to share my screen now. Give me a moment while I share my screen. Okay. All right, can you two see my screen? Efosa and Obawumi, can you see my screen? Efosa and Obawumi, please drop an emoji if you can see my screen. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Efosa. Thank you, Obawumi. Thank you for informing me that you can see my screen. Thank you. All right, so today we'll be talking about evolution. And when we are talking about evolution, we'll be talking about the theories of evolution, the theories of use and disuse, the people involved in evolution, the laws of evolution, the evidence of evolution, forces responsible for evolution, and also some other things. When we talk about evolution, what are we talking about? Evolution is a gradual change that occurs over a long period of time. That is the definition of evolution. It is the gradual changes that occur over a long period of time, and it results in the formation of new life from pre-existing life forms. For example, we human beings, it is believed that we human beings evolved from animals that are called apes. So that is why people say human beings are higher animal. Now, when we're talking about modern evolutionary theory, we are talking about scientific development that led to modern evolutionary synthesis in evolutionary biology. And it includes Darwin's principle of natural selection, Mendel's principle, the theory of use, which is the theory of use and disuse, and the Adi-Wimber's principle, which is on population and genetics. The process of evolution is a continuous process that deals with the creation of diversity of present life forms, and it is determined by environmental selection. The theory of evolution is based on two theories. One, the theory of use and disuse of organs, which was proposed by a scientist called Lamarck, Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck. And we also have the theory of natural selection, which was proposed by Charles Darwin. Let's go on. For the theory of natural selection, what are we talking about? We are talking about the theory of evolution that was first given by a man named Charles Darwin. He was a prominent scientist. He got a book that was titled The Origin of Species, where he described evolution to be descent with modification. It means organisms were descending from their progenitor to their offspring. They were descending, but with modification. Let me give you an example. Science has it that giraffes that have long neck evolved to have long necks. Why? Because when they want to eat, they feed on leaves. When they want to eat leaves on the trees, they find themselves pouting up, trying to reach the leaves on the trees. It is believed that is the reason why giraffes evolved and they have a long neck. That is why today's giraffe have long necks. Human beings also, it was said that human beings have a rudimentary tail, a vestigial tail. Well, I've never seen any human being that has a tail. However, it was said that in the olden days, human beings had tails. But because we were not using them, the tails no longer continue to move on. Instead, they started to disappear. That is, for example, theory of use and disuse. Look at the monkey, for example. Look at the tail of a monkey. The tail of a monkey is very long. Why? The monkeys are always using their tail, using it to hold on to trees, to trunks, branches, jumping and moving from one place to another. So the theory of natural selection, it states that the best adapted organisms are selected by nature to pass on their characteristics to the next generation. Now, a giraffe, for example, was naturally selected, that since they've been able to evolve to have a long neck, what happens? they will be able to move on. They will be able to move on and continue to live and evolve. Are you following? Victoria, you're welcome. You're welcome, Victoria. Thank you, Efosa. Victoria, you're welcome. Okay, so as I was saying, let me take again the theory, the theory of natural selection. I said the theory of natural selection states that the best adapted organisms are selected by nature to pass on their characteristics to the next generation. So it means any organism that's able to survive, what happens? That surviving characteristics that they were able to possess, they were able to acquire, they pass it on to their own offspring, and their own offspring also will be able to survive. Darwin's theory of evolution can be described with some points. The first point, within a population, some individuals have more favorable variations than the other. This leads to the essential element of natural selection, which I said the theory of natural selection was given by a scientist named Charles Darwin. 1, variation is present. 2, variation is heritable. When you say something is heritable, it means it can be inherited. Offspring can inherit it from their father, from their mother, or from both parents. Individuals have different reproductive success. Individuals with higher reproductive success leave disproportionately more offspring. Now, talking about domestication and artificial selection, Charles Darwin used examples of artificial selection to explain natural selection. What is artificial selection? Let me give you an example. They take a breed of a dog, take a breed of another dog, and mate them together. They crossbreed them, and they get another breed of dog. That is artificial selection. We are selecting. Okay, let's take a Chihuahua. Let's crossbreed it with an Eskimo. Let's see what's going to happen. That is artificial selection, compared to natural selection, where it is nature that selects, not human beings. Humans apply artificial selection to generate plants and animals with desirable traits. Example, many breeds of dogs were developed from a single ancestor, the wolf. Wild mustard is the ancestor of broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and cauliflower. Just give me a moment. Let me shut my window. Okay. Then we have sexual selection, which is a competition for mates. Sexual selection can produce sexually dimorphic traits. When we're talking about dimorphic, it can produce individuals that are either intrasexual or intersexual. Just like we're talking about inter-ethnic marriage and intra-ethnic marriage. It's the same thing for sexual selection. Organisms that produce more offspring cannot survive because of limited natural resources. For example, a dog that has 8 teeth, or let's say 4 teeth, 4 mammary glands on the belly, now give birth to 10 puppies. 10 puppies. And the dog only has 4 teeth for breastfeeding. It means only 4 of those puppies will be able to latch on and get milk from their mother. The remaining 6 might eventually die off from lack of food, malnutrition. Because there is struggle for food, struggle for space, and even struggle for mates between members of the same species. Now, these puppies will be struggling with each other. Only the one that knows how to fight very well, first come, first serve, will be able to latch on to the mother's teeth and get breast milk. Also, organisms whose traits are best suited to their environment survive and pass on those variations to their offspring. Like I mentioned earlier, it is called the law of natural selection, And we can also call it survival of the fittest. Like the puppies I made mention of, whose mother has just 4 teeth and there are 10 puppies. Only the one that is able to, only the fittest will be able to latch on and get breast milk from the mother and will go on to survive. And when all these variations accumulate over a long period of time, they lead to the origin of new species. Now, talking about Mendel's law of genetics. Mendel's law. Now, Mendel's law, in his experiments, he used an experimental approach to examine questions about heredity. Now, he used a plant called pea plants that were for pure breeding for specific traits. And he was able to track the inheritance of this trait through multiple generations of the pea plant while he was breeding them. So Mendel now concluded that heredity information is transmitted from parent to offspring through what? Something called gene. For example, your mom is fair in complexion, your father is dark in complexion. When they birthed you, maybe you are a male and you have 2 siblings. You took your mom's complexion, your remaining 2 siblings took your dad's complexion. That is genetics. Or your mom has long fingernails. Sorry, not fingernails. Her hands are long. Her fingers are long. She has long fingers, long and slender fingers. While your dad has short and stout fingers. And one of your siblings decided to go with your dad's finger and took a short and stout finger, but took mommy's complexion. Mommy is fair in complexion. Can you see that? These are coming from genes. They're talking about the Adi-Weinberg principle. The Adi-Weinberg principle is a genetic variation that was introduced to the process of meiosis. Now, the process of meiosis is a random process. It's a random process that gives rise to that helps to give rise to offspring that are genetically the same. They know they are from these parents, but they are still special. And they alter a population's overall gene pool. Then there are some deviations from Adi-Weinberg's principle. Adi-Weinberg principle. Are you following? If you're following, drop an emoji. Okay, thank you, Obawumi. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Efosa. Thank you. Now, the mechanisms that evolution occurs when populations deviate from the Adi-Weinberg equilibrium. And the mechanism that underlies these deviations, they include mutation. What is mutation? Now, mutation is when there is a change in the genetic composition of a species or an organism. Then we have selection, migration, moving from one place to another, genetic drift, non-random mating. Talking about mutation, if you look at the screen, how many of you can see this white alligator? If you can see the white alligator on my screen, drop an emoji. You can see the white alligator on my screen, drop an emoji. Okay, thank you, thank you. Now, the normal color of an alligator, is this the normal color of an alligator? No. Alligators don't look like this. Is not their normal color. Now, this is an example of a mutation. And what is a mutation? It is a random change in an organism's genetic material. And these mutations can be heritable. And when they are heritable, they will lead to a change in the gene and genetic pool of a population. And these new mutations can be harmful, it can be neutral, and it can be advantageous. When it has advantage, what does this mean? It means that it gives the organism more advantage over others. But at times it can be harmful. Then we have selection. Heritable phenotypes that confer a fitness advantage become more common in the population. Now, there are three models of natural selection. We have the directional, which faces a direction, diversifying, it moves around, stabilizing, they are quite stable. Sorry, excuse me. Then we have migration. There is migration into population or migration out. For example, you are in Ogun State, and you tell yourself that, okay, housing is expensive in Ogun State. I heard housing is cheaper in Port Harcourt. You move from Ogun State, you move out of Ogun State and move into Port Harcourt. And you say, oh, the standard of living in Nigeria is not so okay. I no longer like it. I want to move to Côte d'Ivoire. You are migrating out of Nigeria and migrating into Côte d'Ivoire. Migration into and out of a population can cause deviation. And it can cause deviation. Once it causes deviation, there is going to be a change. Then we have genetic drift. In a finite population, random changes in genotypic frequencies will accumulate over time. And this is called a genetic drift. So the smaller the population, the greater the effect of genetic drift on the population's gene pool. Then we have genetic drift and allele fixation. Please excuse me. Genetic drift and allele fixation. Genetic drift can cause fixation of an allele, meaning that every individual is homozygous for that allele. And genetic drift, like I mentioned earlier, is random. But fixation can occur, and fixation occurs by chance. It's also random. And this fixation, this drift, can become harmful. It could be neutral or it can be beneficial. When it's beneficial, it means it is good. Think about non-random mating. Non-random mating will lead to an altered genotypic frequency in a population, because at the Weinberg principle and equilibrium, it assumes random mating. For example, this on my screen is on the right hand side is a swan, are two swans that are engaged in a courtship ritual. A swan and a swan. A swan and a swan. So, okay. They're talking about the theory of use and disuse. Give me a moment. Okay. Okay. If you're following, drop me an emoji. Thank you, Victoria. Efosa, are you there? Okay, thank you, Efosa. Talking about the theory of use and disuse. The theory of use and disuse, like I mentioned earlier, was proposed. Okay, Victoria, what's going on? Victoria, what's going on? Do you have a comment?
No, it was a mistake.
Okay, thank you. I mentioned earlier that the theory of use and disuse was proposed by a French scientist called Lamarck. He proposed the theory of use and disuse of organs. That was what I was talking about, the long necks in giraffe and the long tails in monkeys. According to the theory of Lamarck, which is the theory of use and disuse, it states that the organs which are used regularly become strong and more developed. Continuous extensive use of these organs to cope with the environment keeps that organism active and makes them stronger and more efficient. And that organ becomes more stronger and more efficient. Whereas a continued disuse, when an organism is not using their organ, for example, the so-called rudimentary tails in human beings, because we were not using it, compared to monkeys that are using their own. because we were no longer using our own tail, our tail went back in. Now, that tail now, they say it has a bone in the human body. That bone is called the coccyx bone. They call that bone the tailbone. They say that is the bone that forms the tail. But because we were not using it, theory of disuse, we were not using the tail, so the tail went back in. A continued disuse of organs gradually makes this organ weaker and smaller. It makes this organ become weaker and smaller so that they tend to finally disappear. Thus, by a differential use and disuse of body parts during the lifetime of an organism, this will change to some extent to acquire some traits. Now, what are the evidences of evolution? Number one evidence of evolution that we have evidences from fossil records. What are fossil records? Now, these fossil records, they provide direct evidence of evolution. For example, it is through fossil records that they say that, oh, dragons once existed. Dinosaurs once existed. It is through fossil records that was discovered. Please give me a moment. It is through fossil records that it was discovered that there were dinosaurs, however, they've gone into extinction, and there were dragons, however, they've also gone into extinction. So what are fossils? Fossils are remains of organisms that lived in the past. That's the simple definition of fossils. They are records, they are remains of organisms that lived in the past. And these remains of these organisms are called fossils. Fossils, fossils. And the study of fossils, there are people who study fossils. That is what they do. Just like we have people who study medicine, people who study about animals and become veterinarians, people who study about plants, botanists, okay? So people who study about fossils, they are called paleontologists. Paleontologists. And the process of studying fossils is called paleontology. Now, like I mentioned earlier, fossils provide direct evidence of evolution because they form the geographical record of evolution of different species of organisms. When an organism dies, for example, be it a plant, be it an animal, the body decomposes. And why does it decompose? Through the actions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi. They decompose in the presence of oxygen and even other climatic conditions. And they disintegrate. As they are decomposing, they are disintegrating. These bodies can become fossilized and they become fossils. Yes? About me, did you ask a question?
Yes, what does disintegrate mean?
What does? Can you type it in the chat box? Type it in the chat box. Please type it in the chat box. I will attempt to disintegrate. You're welcome, God's time. Kindly mute your mic. God's time, please mute your mic. You're welcome. Thank you for joining.
Okay.
Abang, please drop your question in the chat box. I'm going to attend to it once and then explain. If you can hear me, drop an emoji. Hello, if you can hear me clearly, drop an emoji. Okay, thank you, Efosa. Efosa can hear me. Okay, thank you, Efosa. Efosa can hear me. Okay, about me, I can see your question. Once I'm done explaining, I'm going to come back and explain and give an explanation to your question, okay? If any other person has any question, you can drop it in the chat box. At the end of, once I'm done explaining, at the end of my explanation, I'm going to give you answers. So we have Another evidence of evolution that we have evidence from embryology. When we talk about embryology, embryology is a science that is concerned with study of formation and organism. That's the meaning of embryology. When you are studying how an organism forms, how an organism develops. For example, you can take a chicken, you mate them, and you study how the yolk is formed for it, how that egg and becomes a chicken. That study embryology. For example, the early embryo of all vertebrates is said that they resemble in shape and structure. Many of them, for example, grow limb bones and develop internal organs. And now look different. But at the early stage of embryology, the early stage of development, they look alike. For example, now the embryo of a fish resemble more than that of a mammal. And also, the degree and duration of the resemblance in this embryo, they indicate evolutionary relationship responsible for evolution. There are three forces already explained, but I'm listing it so you can take note of it. There are some forces responsible for evolution, and there are three. The first one is mutation. The second, the third one is genetic drift. Hello, Melody, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. Please excuse me. I'm going to go over it again. There are three forces responsible for evolution. One, mutation. Two, gene flow. Three, genetic drift. When we're talking about mutation, what are we talking about? Like I've explained mutation earlier. I've explained these three things earlier, but I just want to point it out to you. I said mutation is a random change that occurs in an organism. And this mutation can be harmful, it can be beneficial, or it can be neutral. And it can be passed from one generation to another generation and even cause evolution. Then we have gene flow, which occurs when genes are carried from one population to another. Then genetic drift, which is a random process in which chance plays a role in deciding which gene variations survive. It means you can't control it. It is just left to chance. So now I'm going to ask you to unmute your mics and ask your questions. About me asked the question, she said, what does disintegrated means? Disintegrate means to break down. That's the meaning of disintegrate, disintegrated. Disintegration, disintegrate, disintegrated. It means to break down. That is the definition. To break down. That's what it means. If you have any question, you can unmute your mic and ask, or you can drop it as a message in the chat box. Anybody? Okay, it got to my notice today. I didn't notice that only one person was able to attempt the quiz and the assignment that I gave since the first week of our class. And that was last week. So I wish I will be having a meeting with the admin tomorrow for us to, we are going to be meeting to talk about how to rectify the issue on the dashboard, that because I was told that some of you could not access the recorded sessions, and even you could not access the assignment and quiz. So we'll be working on that tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to sort it out. And once we sort it out in our next class next week, we'll be able to have access to do our assignment, attempt our quiz also. So let me go over the attendance. So Melody, let me go through. Let me go over the attendance. You can unmute your mics. I'm going to be marking the attendance. You can unmute your mic. Melody, your name is not on the attendance. Or are you using a different name for the attendance? Melody, please unmute your mic. Melody, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is your actual name Melody? Because Melody is not on the attendance list. What is your name, Melody? Your name. Is your name Melody? Because Melody is not on the attendance list.
Irena say.
What's your other name? Okay, I still can't see the name you called. The name you just called, I still can't find it on the attendance list. Irena say. I can't find Irena say on the attendance list. Melody, please reach out to the admin. Your name is not on the attendance list. Okay, Efosa.
Okay,
Efosa, please unmute your mic. Is your actual name Efosa?
Ma'am.
Is your actual name Efosa?
No, ma'am. That's my Gmail name.
Okay, so what's your name? What's your name?
I think my name is Praise Archibald.
Your name is what? Praise Archibong. Efosa, did you say your name is Praise Archibong? Efosa, please speak up. I cannot hear you.
Praise Archibald. Yes.
Okay, let me go over it again. Praise Archibong.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Praise Archibong, please reach out to the admin. Your name is not on the attendance. Thank you. Victoria, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Is your actual name Victoria?
Yes, Audion Victory.
I don't think your name is on this attendance. I don't think I've ever seen name Victoria on this attendance. Victoria, your name is also not on the attendance. Please reach out to the admin to rectify that.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, I think that is all that we have. I've marked Obawumi present. Okay, Obawumi, you're raising up your hand. Do you have a question? Obawumi, you can speak.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, what's your question?
About what to, so what
About
is
what?
adding principle?
What is what?
Adding Webber principle.
Okay, do you need me to take you through it again?
I said the adding Webber
No, can you hear me?
Yes.
You're asking about the Adiwemba principle.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go over it again. First of all, let me state Adiwemba's principle. An allele and genotype frequency in a population, they will continue to remain constant from generation to generation. That is genetic equilibrium. In the absence of any evolutionary influence, If there's no evolutionary influence, no mutation, nothing, it will remain constant from one generation to another generation. It even has a formula, but that formula is not for your level. If you go on to the Maya institution and you study some science-related courses, they will take you through it. Okay? Have I been able to answer your question? Have I been able to answer your question?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Abayomi, for asking that question. Thank you so much. Okay, does any other person have any other question? Okay, in the absence of question, I'm going to bring the class to a close. I'm going to bring the class to a close in the absence of other questions. So I'm going to see you. Our next class is next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. Please let's endeavor to come early. We came really, really late today. We started the class so late today, and I'm not happy about that. So let's endeavor to turn up early for our next class next week. Okay? So I'm going to be expecting to see all of you. Victoria, I will be expecting you next week. Efos, I will be expecting you next week. Melody, I will be expecting you next week. And Abayomi, I will be expecting you on next week, Thursday. So do have a nice weekend. Bye.